Ready for our second geopolitical conflict in this region's waters? Well, we are now talking about the South China Sea. So here is the curve of China, there's Hong Kong, and the South China Sea is to the south of China. And of course, it also overlaps between East Asia and Southeast Asia. The Philippines here, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, all of those countries are involved in this geopolitical conflict surrounding the South China Sea. Okay, so let's look at this one in more detail. And an awful lot of the conflict here is being driven by China and the way that China is trying to claim more and more territory. And there's a whole bunch of really small islands like the Spratly Islands and some other ones. There's one called Mischief Island in here. There's a whole bunch of very small dots, some of which are just little bits of coral that pop out of the sea. And China is claiming them and literally turning them into larger islands. They are actually building islands in this area to extend their claims of territory. Because as we talked about in the last lecture, where you draw your territorial boundaries, or the territorial waters, that affects how far your claim into that water can extend, because you have, if you have an island, you have a certain area around that island that is considered your territorial waters. So China is extending its claims further and further south into territory and into islands that are claimed by Vietnam, by Brunei, by Indonesia, the Philippines. So that's why we have a territorial conflict here. We have issues of sovereignty, we have issues of control, and of course, we have issues of resources. And when I say that China is building islands, that is literally what I mean. They are bringing in huge amounts of sand, they're pouring concrete, and they are turning into these little spits of coral, these little bits of islands, into larger places, some of them have ports, some of them have landing strips, and some of them have areas where Army or Navy can be and have an armed emplacement. Okay. So, for example, here is the original island here. This is what it looked like in 2014, just a little bit of coral. The original structure was right there. I don't know who built it, but then China started to pour concrete and make an artificial island. They dredged a channel, and this is what it looked like by 2015. There was a helipad, so they could land helicopters here. Okay. Here are one of the Spratly Islands. This is what it looked like in 2014, and that's what it looked like in 2016. And look, they built a harbor. They've expanded the landing strip a bit, maybe. They've extended the island. So they are literally building islands to try to expand their territorial claims. Okay. So why do they want to do this? Well, this is how these claims go. The red line, that is called, hang on, we'll start the video now. Hang on, I'm going to collapse that for a minute. This is the competing claims. Okay, so here's Brunei's claim. Here's the claim from Malaysia, right? Vietnam has some claims in this area. There's this red dashed line, that is called the 9-dash line, and that is what China claims that belongs to them. They claim that this has been their territorial waters for hundreds of years, and the other countries are like, no, this is our area. This is where we have claims. These are our waters. And this has gone to the World Court. This has gone to the UN, and there continues to be a lot of conflict. A number of the court cases have actually gone against China. One of them, for example, was about how the Chinese, by building these islands and pouring concrete, is actually destroying the coral reefs in some of these areas. And they lost. China lost. Vietnam won. And China basically said, yeah, okay, fine, whatever, we're not going to change. We're not going to stop what's happening. So this has become a really difficult situation because China is not interested in working with these other countries, and they're not interested in curtailing their activities because they want to control this waterway through the South China Sea. They are very concerned about being able to move their goods back and forth. Okay? So now we will watch this video This is another video by the Map Men, those kind of silly guys that have a very cool sense of humor, and they are examining this body
Welcome
of water.
to Map Men.
Oops.
We're the men, and here's the map.
Goodness.
Today, we're talking about a map of the
All right. Let's try this
sea,
again.
specifically
There we go. Okay.
The South China Sea, which can be found here, just south of China, in this bit of sea.
Now, you might think there's not a lot of point in mapping the sea.
But if you look quite literally below the surface, you can find valuable fish stocks, oil reserves, and a giant swimming pool the size of an Earth-sized planet.
But given how many countries border this patch of sea, I feel like we're saying sea a lot.
There's nothing we can do about it.
Drawing up these borders can be more contentious than a 1960s East German Olympic blood sample.
First there's Brunei, with its neat yet noticeably phallic claim. Then we add Malaysia.
Then we add the Vietnamese claim. Then the Philippine claim. And finally the Chinese claim, which they call the 9-dash line. Ooh, harsh.
This leaves a corner of sea claimed by China, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia and the Philippines, which was ridiculous, but here at MapMen it's the sort of thing we really love.
The trouble is, painting a line in the sea doesn't really work. So what's a better way of proving that you own the sea?
The answer is land. Here in the middle of it all are the uninhabited Spratly Islands, a series of tiny reefs and sandbanks, and all the countries involved claim some for themselves so they can own the sea around them. And cheeky China have also been building innocuous things like gun turrets, helipads, naval ports and airstrips.
But it doesn't stop there. China have been using enormous dredging boats to build even more Spratly Islands, including this one, which is genuinely called Mischief Reef. So now it's land, and now it's theirs. Ow.
So why do people here, in China, care so much about control of the sea?
At the moment, Chinese ships can travel through this area as they please. But if there were a war, these narrow pathways could easily be blockaded.
Which could result in China's hugely export-orientated economy collapsing faster than a 1960s East German Olympic Stadium. So for now, China is sticking with its 9-dash line. And would you mess with China? No. Analysts agree that this sticky sea situation is set to continue for at least hours.
I need a real bath.
So, yeah, definitely going to continue for a few hours. In fact, it has been escalating. And I've put an article about that. So that's the 9-dash line. This is where China is claiming things. And remember that we talked about this sea passage. We mentioned it when we were talking about Hong Kong. And what is this body of water called right there? That is, of course, the Strait of Malacca. And then you go through the Strait of Malacca and then right up this way. Here's Hong Kong. And this is a massively important channel and passageway. Strait. There's the other word I need. And so it has a huge amount of trade that moves through here. Right? Hundreds of billions of dollars are at stake. And so China is very interested in making sure that they can move their goods and that no one can block them. And that is why they are building these islands. It has actually almost evolved into a shooting match a couple of times. If things start going badly, the United States would probably be involved because we have mutual defense agreements with the Philippines and with some other countries. And this could evolve into a pretty messy situation. So there's this article here, this one's from September, and it explains a little bit more about what China is doing and how that is causing conflict across Asia, especially between East Asia and Southeast Asia. Okay? And along with that shipping lane, right, all of those billions of dollars, there's also a bunch of oil off of the coast here. And there's fishing grounds. And so, yet again, right, resources are mixed up in geopolitics. One of the reasons that Brunei is so wealthy is because of the oil off the coast. And China is also interested in having access to that oil and to the fishing grounds. Okay? All right, so those are the geopolitical situations we're going to examine. Next up, we will talk about culture.